when this party was happening, Michael, you were in a very different position.
Yes, I was in a coma. I was put into induced coma at the beginning of April. I was in it for 40 days. So on May the 20th, I was, right there, Sparko.
And I know, because we've talked about it before, you were lucky to be alive.
Very much so, both just before I went to A&E and maybe a couple of times while I was in the intensive care ward. It was touch and go with me. And in fact, in my ward, I think I heard from the consultant 42% of us died. So
you now, thankfully, almost back to full fitness, but you're or not?
It knocked out. COVID knocked out the sight in my left eye and my left ear, probably from microclots in the brain. Probably that's the present diagnosis. But physically, for the rest of me, mostly okay. A bit dizzy sometimes, but mostly okay. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that. But I can't imagine what you think about this news of this party.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that when I was in the intensive care, of course, my wife and family couldn't come to see me. And given that I might have died at any moment, and this was happening to other people, this would have been traumatic for them. I mean, I made a kind of flip joke about it on Twitter, saying that, you know, I wasn't there at the party. I was in a coma. But the point is, these traumas and upsets and pains are going on all across the country. They were then, and they still are. I mean, we think of these as personal traumas, but when it's as widespread as that, it's a social trauma. And the way governments handle social trauma is political. This is the thing. So we just heard the minister talking then. I mean, he mentioned the numbers, but it's not a matter of numbers. It's how we feel as a country or as communities, as villages, towns, cities, about this stuff. And we meet each other, we talk to each other, so it's shared between us. And the idea that we went through this trauma, and they, as you said, you know, 100 people were invited. I mean, that's a fact before us. Sitting there quaffing drinks and having a laugh while other people were going through. I mean, on the thread following my silly tweet, you know, hundreds of stories already emerging, you know, somebody saying goodbye to their husband on the doorstep. He says, God bless. He gets in the car off to the hospital, and they never see him again because they can't go into the hospital to see him. Well, that's a pain that you feel in yourself, and that's being felt, as I say, all over the country.
Do you think that Boris Johnson should resign, Michael?
In a way, I mean, I sort of don't care either way. I mean, if he resigns, someone else fits in. What we have to do is address how you deal with this kind of social trauma, and indeed dig up as to how and why it happened. You know, I think you can trace back to a speech that Boris Johnson gave on February the 3rd in Greenwich to see this indifference. He spoke then about how he was against what he called market segregation, very strange phrase to mean he was against public health policy to deal with the pandemic as it was appearing. February the 3rd, 2020, the Greenwich speech. Well, this current has run from the government ever since. I mean, they took the lockdown just as I was going into hospital. Many people say it was too little too late given what was coming. I don't know fully, but certainly there was this indifference and the idea that maybe you could beat this virus with what they called herd immunity, and yet there was no real evidence that herd immunity works and so on. So they were trying to not deal with it. And this is part, I believe, of the trauma that we're all facing.
Michael, thank you. I'm glad you're on your feet again and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Jeremy.